All right, maybe dive right in. My name is Abhinav, as Alan said. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Smartnumbers. And Smartnumbers is an organization which helps contact centers detect fraud and authenticate callers in real time. So I thought about today and the audience that we have. So we have an audience which is, knows their technology, knows telecom, knows regulation. So what could I talk about? And I thought the best thing I could talk about is what we've learned from our customers in the fraud space and in the contact center space. So, and how these three things, technology, telecom, and regulation come together to help us address this problem. So the first thing maybe that I can talk about is the size of the problem. So if you look at fraud today, there's a number of data points that come from a lot of different places. UK has a company called, a forum called UK Finance, which publishes some stats. And UK Finance's members are the ones who are reporting these stats. And about 50 of the top sort of financial organizations in the UK are losing about 1.2 billion due to fraud. Go over the pond to the US side, and you've got a different sort of reporting mechanism by FTC, which is the Consumer Sentinel Network. And in there, you have about 8.8 billion reported lost by consumers. Now, these numbers are probably underreported and smaller than what the actual cost of fraud is. There's some research that the UK government did recently this year, and they have a fraud strategy, and the numbers are much bigger. So you've got 1.2 billion there, but in reality, it goes up to 7 billion as cost to the economy. If you think about how fraudsters go about and actually get into committing this fraud and what their tactics are, we see a lot of different types of frauds. So, iPhone stolen, people's pensions stolen, credit card fraud, romance scams, money stolen from people on dating sites. But overall, generally, there's sort of a pattern on how fraudsters work. And there's they do sort of go through these high-level 4 steps. And the first step is harvesting data. And that's, we all know about data breaches and loss of data across the world as more data breaches happen. And the first step is harvesting this data. And that would be either through phishing or through going into the dark web and buying some data. The second step then they go into is reconnaissance. And reconnaissance is just to augment that data, to get more information on data. So it might be you've got some credit card numbers, and now you want to check whether these are valid. You want to check what are the balance on these credit card numbers. Are these high net worth credit card numbers worth stealing? Should you be paying $10 for them on the dark web or $20 for them? And then you go on to the next step where the fraudster will actually go into what we call preparation for actual cash out. And in the preparation stage, they would do stuff like take over the account, reset credentials, use the information that they have to prepare for the actual cash out event. And finally, the last step would be monetization, where they actually cash out, and ultimately this is either an iPhone 15 Pro today in their hand, or it's £10,000 stolen from someone's bank account. So it could be any form of it, but overall that's the overall framework that they use, that we've mapped out. So how does the contact center relate to this? When we talk to our customers, a lot of them focus on the cash out part, the last part, where if I'm on the contact center, has someone made a payment or stolen some money on the phone while in the contact center? And working with customers over the years and looking at feedback data, what we've realized is there's a lot of value and a lot of hidden fraud before the cash out even happens. And that's down to reconnaissance and harvesting stages within the contact center. And what happens is these are what we call enabling stages for the cash out. And the cash out might happen on the contact center, but the cash out might happen somewhere else on another channel. So it might happen on web, it might happen on mobile. So putting it in the contact center perspective, this is the same sort of 4 stages. Data harvesting is not generally in the contact center. We see both reconnaissance and preparation happening within the contact center, and that's down to people testing, fraudsters dialing in through automated mechanisms, testing multiple date of births on an account. So you dial into a credit card account, first question asked is, what's the date of birth? And you see 01, 08, 02, 08, and people are just going through that and augmenting that data in there. And then socially engineering agents, or actually using the IVR to reset credentials, change the phone number on the account so that later when the one-time password is sent, it's sent to the fraudster's phone number rather than to the actual phone number of the genuine customer. And then finally the execution, you've got cash out. Like I said, some of it happens in contact center, but that's this much, and most of it actually correlates to cash out on the digital channel, digital meaning web or mobile, and you've got all sorts of things that happen there. You've got romance scams. If people don't know what romance scam is quite a big thing right now in US and in the UK, and it's where fraudsters actually end up having a fake romantic relationship with the victim online. And the victim, believe me or not, even if they know the fraudster just for about 2 weeks, never having met them, would send them tens of thousands of pounds. And they're quite manipulative, and it's you think that you couldn't fall a victim of, some of your family or friends couldn't fall a victim to this, but actually when you look at the stats and people who fall victim, they are quite rational people, and these fraudsters are quite manipulative. I like one of our customers, I've put in my name in, but there are teams who are tackling this. Sorry, I shouldn't reveal the name. So if you look at what we did is, over the last year, for the last 12 months, we collected some stats on what is the makeup of this fraud. We get a lot of feedback data from our customers. So we are working with some of the largest banks in the UK, and we have very high coverage within the UK. And with that, we see a lot of feedback data on what we've reported as a high-risk call. Is that actually transformed into fraud or not? What we've reported as a genuine call, did that turn out to be spoofed or not? And based on that, we've collated that data and published a report. You get a QR code in the end. You won't have to fill a form or anything, but you can just download it later. But what we've seen is 1 in 500 calls are suspicious coming into a contact center. Some of them into the IVR, some get to the agent, but a lot, if you have a good self-serve IVR, there's a lot of data leakage in the IVR. This is the breakdown that we see on how we are able to detect fraud, and I'll walk you through it a little bit. This is my main slide, so I should definitely walk through it slowly. The first part is, this is just sort of going through how we are detecting this fraud and how customers are protecting themselves. And the first part is basically maintaining a watch list of numbers that you know about. We call these fraudsters frequent flyers. They are not too clever. They use the same number. They come in again and again. But they are depending on weak technology, weak processes. So we've talked to some quite big brand contact centers where actually every day in the morning, a group of agents on a floor will write some number on a post-it note and stick it on their screens. And when the fraudster changes it in 2 weeks, they update the post-it note and stick it on their screen. So, with that sort of thing, just improving the technology and process for maintaining a watch list, very simple, they could protect themselves. But the technology is so poor generally in the contact centers that it's difficult for them to even do that. The second list is, slightly more clever. So if you look at the second one, about 25% of the calls come from this category. And these are basically fraudsters known to the organization, but they are withholding their CLI or anonymizing their number. So they're not presenting their CLI. Now, I know in the US, you still, at the contact center layer, you still see it. If you're calling into a toll-free number, Even if you withhold your CLI, you still see it. In UK and other countries, you don't. But if you work with your carrier, they're generally, if our customers or these end customers work with their carrier or work with their telco, there's generally regulations for preventing fraud which allow you to actually stop this category as well. And we help our customers with this category as well and help block calls from known fraudsters who are anonymizing their CLI. The third one we have is quite important. We've seen great value here, actually, because every new customer that joins us or starts using the product adds immense value to everyone who's already there. And that's sort of watch lists of other customers and fraudsters that are known to other customers that you're not aware of. As soon as they land on the platform, in real time, you get protected from those. And you'll see the impact of this. This is, although it says 17% of the calls are from this category, what we've seen is at least 52% of the fraudsters. So we've collated numbers, MOs, what they do, how they do it, the nicknames of fraudsters, but about 52% of them attack more than one organization. So when you know that there's immense value as an organization to benefit from that data here. And finally, the topic that everyone talked about yesterday, there's a bit of AI, there's a bit of ML, but a lot of the fraud can only be detected by using technology like AI. And what we do is, at the moment, we look at signaling data, we look at the phone number, we look at the age of the number, we look at which operators they're coming from. We feed that all into a model, and we get a risk-based analysis based on that. It goes from sort of green, amber, red, and the red part is where the fraud happens. And the big thing here is we get a lot of feedback data from our customers on both genuines and fraud. So unlike some call labeling services we have in the US, which there's a lot of false positives, it's not the same thing. It's very specific to an industry, it's very specific to a customer, it's very well-trained models rather than just anomaly detection. There are two sort of main pillars on how we talk about what you can do to tackle fraud with customers. One is sharing intelligence. Now, this is not sharing intelligence within two organizations. That's really important. As I said, 52% of fraudsters attack multiple organizations. And it's very difficult to do it in real time and enabling that in real time. It's also sharing intelligence within systems internally. You wouldn't believe how disconnected systems are within the contact center. So you've got fraud detection systems for plastics channel, fraud detection system for non-plastic, or fraud detection for someone coming on the web, mobile. And these systems don't talk to each other. And the big thing here is a contact center as a channel is completely missing from most fraud detection systems. So the risk signals that come in from contact center don't actually go in. And when you look at retail, insurance, finance, wherever you go, wherever there's money involved, there's a fraud detection system of some sort that they have internally, which is being used. And it is missing signals from the contact center. So what we do is we bring those signals into the fraud detection platform and give them a holistic picture, which is where sharing intelligence within internal platforms is quite important. And at the start here, lots of stats. 26 calls we've seen on average before a cash out event happens. We find out about the cash out event because our customers report them to us. But we know the high risk calls, how they've gone onto the account before the actual cash out has happened. The second bit is using carrier data and AI. I won't sort of go into again on this point, but this is essentially where we can support customers better with the knowledge from telecoms, with the knowledge from technology, and with the knowledge from sort of regulatory aspects. And I'll sort of go slightly into the regulatory aspects as well and what we're doing there. So if you look at the fraud and regulatory landscape in the UK, there's a number of things that are happening. UK is looking at stir shaken. I think UK is still probably going to be 5 to 7 years behind where US is, and I don't think US is in a good place. So, but we are looking at it. It's something that is in the government strategy. Ofcom's looking at it. The second thing is the UK government has a fraud strategy, which is going into a lot of different things right now. This was also launched this year. And the third one is the members coming together to fight fraud together as part of UK finance. But that's UK, but if you look at other countries, it's very much similar. So everyone's doing the same-ish things, if you look at them. And I know the person who was presenting from Caller ID Reputation yesterday talked about DNO list and a number of these things. But US did do not originate lists, UK does it now. And DNO list, if people don't know how fraudsters use it and why it's done, it's basically it's the number at the back of your card. And fraudsters, when they call the victims, they say, hey, look at the back of the card. I'm the bank, I'm calling you. And the DNO list is about making that number unavailable for calling, because that number requires calls coming in, but it doesn't need to be published and called out. So DNO list is fairly effective, although still, there are leaks in that. You've got protected or invalid numbers as well, where if you have unallocated ranges, invalid numbers, protected numbers, they should be used and should be blocked. So these are sort of not machine learning based interventions, not advanced technology interventions. These are quite basic interventions that the different countries are putting in. You got fixed CLI blocking, which UK is doing, Germany is doing, a number of other countries are doing. This is where local in-country CLIs are not allowed to come in from international routes. So if you have a German number coming in from an international route, it'll get blocked. So it's that sort of intervention. Same for the UK. I think mobile CLI blocking is also another thing Ireland is doing. I know Germany is doing, UK is doing as well. And in there are more challenges because they don't want to block people who are roaming. There's technology challenges, but I think these interventions have worked a lot better than some of the more advanced interventions like call analytics in the network or stir shaking. Actually, I'm going to show you an example of one of these interventions in the UK and what we saw. So this is data from our platform. And when the fixed CLI blocking regulation or rule came in the UK, it was implemented in around July 2022. And we saw spoofing drop from where it was to less than 1/10 of it. And the point here is actually regulations, technology, these keep changing. What you need to do from a fraud platform or from detecting fraud perspective is adapt to it. And what we'll see, or what we're seeing happening, or is predicted to happen is, less spoofing, more SIM swaps, more burner phones, different strategies. But fraudsters need to get on with their business. They need to earn their money. They'll do it somehow, and they'll move on to something else. So, how do we then trust the CLI? And it's quite advantageous for customers in contact centers to be able to trust the CLI and to be able to base the call on that level of trust. And we come across this largely for authentication use cases where they want to trust the CLI. But there's some good and some bad here. The good thing is, now 80% plus calls are coming from mobiles nowadays. This is stats from the UK, but I looked at US and it's quite similar in there as well. There are regulatory gaps. So even though UK, for example, blocked international routes sending UK network CLIs, which is sort of the billing number, you can still send UK presentation CLIs from international routes, and they haven't blocked that yet, and that's next to come. So, there's always gaps in the regulation which allow fraudsters to do what they need to do. And finally, I'd say because of all of that, because of the regulatory gaps, because of the changing technology landscape, the best way to do it is with technology, like AI, using it to actually adapt to the changing behavior. and to the changing landscape that's occurring. Final slide, looking into the future. I think this is a bit marketing here, I would say, but I think we talk about where this is all going from a fraud perspective and a fraud detection perspective. And we see sort of three pillars again here. One is there's a possibility of stronger detection mechanisms. So as customers, there's a big move right now happening from customers from on-premise contact centers to cloud. So large banks are moving from, whatever they were on Avaya to Amazon Connect or to Genesis Cloud. And what that does is it gives you more data. IVR logs, as an example, are inaccessible when a bank's on-premise. But when you go into the cloud, when you work with these cloud platforms, it's much easier to even access those IVR logs and bring that into your fraud detection mechanisms and bring that into your ML models. The other thing is audio. So audio becomes much more accessible in cloud platforms. Again, when you're on-premise, there's privacy, there's all sorts of restrictions, which means that you can't easily consume audio. But as these customers are moving to cloud, audio is easier to consume. You don't have to go into complex, creating SIPREC streams from an SBC and adding, 1,000 more licenses. What you can do is, just a Kinesis stream from Amazon Connect, and you've got it, and you can analyze it, and you can, do something with it. And the second thing is stronger collaboration. I think this is one bit that I feel Smartnumbers is excelling at, and a lot of other people don't do, which is we started out as a native cloud platform, and what happened is we were naturally a consortium. Like you have to opt out of the consortium. You're in the consortium, whereas most of the platforms that started before us started on-premise, and so building a consortium, building shared intelligence is very difficult for them. And what we've seen come out of that is actually new customers. What happens is you've got a fraudster that's been detected with one customer. They see that in real time that it's the same fraudster has attacked two other customers, and they want to talk to them. They want to get on the phone with them. So we started out sort of aiding these phone calls. So we have phone calls. We are creating collaboration between these customers. They're getting on the phone. They're talking to each other. But at the same time, they pull in other people who are not our customers on those calls, and then they, in turn, in the longer term, become our customers. But what we're trying to do is, we can't scale that. We can't scale arranging phone calls for customers. So what we're trying to do is building that collaboration within the platform. And actually aiding that communication within the platform itself. Finally, I had a point earlier about a lot of new APIs coming out from the mobile networks, finally, after a long time. And there's some sort of consistency among them now. So, like people like Telesign are doing, aggregating it, getting some consistency in it, and sharing it out. And that allows for, or the use cases we've used it for, it allows for more holistic investigations by our fraud teams. So if you got, I'll give an example. An example works best, a real example. We tried to use this IMEI lookup API, which looks up a device ID for a phone number in real time for all fraudulent calls that were coming into a customer. And previously, what we thought was 50 different fraudsters with 50 different numbers. We figured out it's actually 20 fraudsters. They're just changing the SIM every 2 weeks. They're using the same device. And by the way, iPhones are the most common devices for fraudsters. They're not going to replace them anytime soon. And iPhone 7 seems to be the preferred device as well. So anyway, that's my presentation. Ending on that, you can all download this report, which will give you a bit more detail into the numbers. And thank you. Any questions?